Hey guys, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to another Quick Tank review. This time we're looking at the Tier 8 Chinese heavy tank, the 110. The 110 is a remarkably well-rounded heavy tank with fantastic frontal armor, a very nice performing gun, and pretty good mobility. This sounds like the tank for you, then hang around. I'll go over it all in complete detail for you. And if you're not interested in the Chinese tanks, I'll tell you how to take these out effectively on the battlefield. So this tank has got 1,550 hit points. It weighs just over 51 tons when it's fully equipped. And my recommended equipment would be vertical stabilizers, a large rammer, and your ventilation. Now, considering the weight, the engine power is rather underwhelming, and it's got to be one of the downsides of this tank. 580 brake horsepower when the tank weighs 51 tons. Means that it does not have a very good specific power ratio, meaning that this has the acceleration of the German heavy tanks. It is very different, for example, to the IS-3, which weighs 2 tons less, and it has 120 more brake horsepower, so don't expect the same acceleration that you will get from the Russian Tier 8 heavy tank. However, the top speed limit on the 110 is not that bad. It's at 40 kilometers an hour, which is about standard for most of the Tier 8 heavy tanks now. It's interesting that now the Tiger II has a top speed limit of 38 kilometers an hour. The T-32 at 35. It's only really the KV-4, which you would class as more of a super heavy at Tier 8, that has its top speed limit at 30 kilometers an hour. So that means as long as you don't require your engine power to go up slopes, you can pretty much keep up with IS-3s. Now the traverse speed on this tank is 30 degrees, which is the same as the IS-3. And when you combine this with the turret traverse of 26 degrees a second, that means that if you use your tracks and your turret, you can quickly re-engage targets. Now, the reason why I'm talking so much about this tank in comparison to the IS-3 is that one of the most frequently asked questions that I get about the 110 and the IS-3 is which one's better, especially when it comes to Tier 8 tank companies or the 742 game mode. So during this review, I'm going to try and keep comparing the tanks. And so far that we can see that apart from the engine power, which limits the acceleration of this tank, it very much keeps up with the IS-3. Now, don't think I'm trying to sweep that engine power difference under the carpet. It is a significant factor. And it's probably one of the reasons why I would probably prefer the IS-3 to the 110. But that sounds like far too much of a spoiler. I'm not going to go there all the way. The 110 is far better in some situations, as I'm going to be highlighting in this review. So let's take a look at the armor of this tank. It's got 120 at the front, it's very well angled, 90 at the side, 60 at the rear, and the turret armor is 201 at the front, 148 at the side, and 50 at the rear. Let's take a look at the armor in some more detail in What Tank Viewer. So here's our 110. I'm just going to put up the armor profile for you, and here you can see the key at the bottom. We can see that the upper plate is very thick, 120 millimeters, and it's very well angled. So that means that if you do get engaged from the front, if they hit anywhere on this upper surface, it's almost an auto bounce. We can see that there are cheeks here that are 100 millimeters. But again, they are very well angled, as we can see here. And that generally means that if they get hit from the front, that is going to be another auto bounce. Now, the lower plate is surprisingly thick, actually. It's 110 millimeters. And I'm going to talk about one of the biggest mistakes that people make when they're engaging 110. They think, oh, the lower plate, it's got to be much, much, much weaker. Oh, it's going to be so easy. But look, the frontal armor on this tank is almost like a pyramid. Now, if for some reason the 110 is slightly above you, the armor angle will be reduced, and this is a very easy target to shoot up into. And because of the lack of gun depression on the 110, they often have to crest ridges to be able to shoot you. And take advantage of this. If you can see the lower plate when it's slightly above you, then you can penetrate it more or less every time with every gun that this tank is going to meet. However, it's far more likely that you're going to have your turret at about the same level as the 110. And if you're at this kind of distance and you try and shoot down at the lower plate, you're effectively going to be firing from here down at the lower plate, and that exaggerates the angle of it even more. And as it is 110 millimeters, that means that the lower plate can be notoriously tricky to penetrate. If you're a 110 driver, face hugging is not quite the thing that I would recommend that you do, especially if they've got good gun depression and they can get the side and then shoot down on your upper plate. You want to keep your enemies at about this kind of distance, keeping the maximum angle on this kind of pyramid armor that you have here, making it very, very tricky for them. So looking at the side armor of the tank, it has 90 millimeters on the top and 60 behind the tracks. That means that if you're engaging a 110 from the side, if you can try and shoot to avoid the tracks, in these gaps here, it's almost going to be a certain penetration. But even still, 90 millimeters on the side, even though it's slightly angled, it should still be easy for you to take. There is a complete lack of spaced armor down the side of the 110. And if you do get the rear of the 110, it is going to be very easy to penetrate. As we can see here, 60 completely at the back. Very easy target for you. And 50 at the back of the turret, which is also a very good opportunity for you to take if you can see it. So this means that if you're driving the 110, you are a frontal tank. You need to keep your frontal armor to the enemy at all times. This tank is basically like an IS-7, meaning that if you give the enemy your side, they're going to be able to penetrate you in many locations. And one thing that you have to be afraid of is when you come out round the corner, your beak gets exposed very easily. And if you give the side of your beak, so to say, here, that means that it becomes very flat, and they can penetrate here for reliable damage. But this is only going to be higher tiered targets, really, in my opinion, that are going to be able to get through this 120mm of armor, because as you can see, it is still very well angled, even from the side. Now I'm going to quickly go over the turret armor. We can see that there's 201mm here, 148 in a second bar here, another bar, 129, and then we can see the next band of armor above that is 102mm, but it's very well angled. Now one of your best options when engaging the 110 if you can't shoot his upper plate is to take advantage of his commander's cupolas up the top. So we can see here they're completely flat and they're only 102mm thick. This means that if the 110 is stationary, you can take great advantage of this and snipe at his cupolas. And that means that if you're a 110 driver, you want to make it as difficult for the enemy to hit these as possible, especially if you can see that he's aiming slightly upwards and therefore you know he's probably going for your cupolas to try and take you out. What that means is you need to go backwards and forwards, you need to turn your turret, you need to move your gun around between shots just to try and make it difficult for him to pinpoint them. And there's a skill in that in a 110 driver, knowing if he's trying to go for your hull armor, especially if he's trying to get the side, so to say, and aim down on it. That means you need to get distance to try and increase the angle on it. Hopefully try and bait him into shooting your lower plate, even though it's going to be at a horrible angle for him. And if you see him aiming at your cupolas, then you need to really make them as tricky for him to hit as possible. We can see the front of the gun manlet is 250mm of spaced armor. And if we hide it, as we can see here, the area around the gun also has more armor behind it, which is 201 and 148mm thick. What this means is that unless you actually shoot through the gun, so to say, with a very high caliber gun and break through the 250mm of spaced armor, you're not going to be able to penetrate the turret. And you can use this as one of your strengths in the 110. So that's quite enough about the armor. We found out that this tank is very strong frontally, although it does have weak points up the top. You want to try and hide your long side profile as much as possible and never give the enemy the back of your tank. So this tank has remarkable mobility, albeit for the engine power, and very strong frontal armor. So if you were thinking it was going to have a weak gun, then you'll be either bitterly disappointed or very happy, depending if you want to drive one or not. Because this tank has a great 100mm. Even though the caliber of the gun is 100mm, it still has the same alpha damage as, for example, the 107mm on the KV-4 or the 105mm on the T-32, and that is 320. Now this tank's rate of fire is a rather nice 6 rounds a minute. And what that means when we use tank compare, we can see our 110 on the left, KV-4 in the middle, and Tiger 2 on the right. But they all have the same alpha damage. Their penetration is fairly similar, although the Chinese 110 does have 10mm less than the other two. However, the DPM, due to the rate of fire, is significantly higher on the 110 than, for example, the KV-4, and it is higher than the Tiger 2. So we can see that the 100mm on the 110 has 6 degrees of gun depression and 15 degrees of elevation. Now, its accuracy obviously can't compete with the Tiger 2 gun. It is the same as the KV-4. However, its aim time is better than the KV-4 but worse than the Tiger 2. So what this really means is that you have a very strong performing gun. Now its penetration is much better than the T-32, which as many of you will know, with the 105 only has 198mm of penetration, which is very underwhelming. Having that 215mm isn't quite on par with, for example, the IS-3, the Tiger 2 and the KV-4, which all roughly get 225, but it is nice to have that much more than, for example, the T-32. In my opinion, 250mm of penetration at Tier 8 is enough, and if you really need to, you can fire APCR rounds with 265mm of penetration. Now, the aim time on this gun at 2.9 could be better, but that's not disastrous. That's not kind of the 3.4 that we see on the KV-4's gun. And the accuracy, again, 0.38, it could be better, but again, it's not disastrous. As we can see, the IS IS-3's 122mm does have that .4 accuracy. Now, one thing that I'm not going to brush over is the fact that the 110 has 380 meters view range thanks to its upgraded turret. Interestingly, this is 30 meters more than the IS-3, and this is very important, especially when you consider selection for tank companies. Having that 30 meters more view range than the IS-3 does mean that you spot your enemies a lot further away, especially considering that the IS-3 with its 3.4 second aim time has to use vertical stabilizers. I'm sure that some custom setups on the 110 could even drop out the stabilizers or maybe the ventilation for optics to really increase this 380 meters view range, or even binoculars considering it might be just camping base. And that makes the tank have the same view range, I believe, as the AMX 5100, slightly less than the German tanks, and 20 meters less than the Carnarvon and the T-32. So anyway, that's quite enough about the stats of the tank. Let's see how it performs in some gameplay. So firstly, we're going to look to see how the 110 performs by playing quite aggressively. I'm playing on Muravanka here, along with Jingles and with Ike. This is a very nice matchup for this tank. We can see that the enemy is composed of tier 8s, and half of their team are tier 7 and below. And I really feel that these kind of matchups are where the 110 can perform. As with any tank that doesn't fully rely on its armor, but it certainly helps when you get to be able to use your armor. Most tier 10 tanks are able to just laugh and just shoot you in the front. Many tier 9 tanks will still give you a good drubbing, especially the medium tanks with the extra high penetration can just almost look at your frontal armor and take you out. So that means that when you're engaging tier 8s, but hopefully when you're engaging tier 7s and tier 6s, your armor from the front is nearly impenetrable. And that's one of the great things about the 110. So, I'm playing quite aggressively here. I want to stop enemies from getting up into the A1, B1 area. You can see I've spotted the type. I take out their scout, don't want him spotting me. And we roll quite nicely there for 340 damage. We put another shot in there in the Jagdpanther, and just to highlight on that 340 alpha damage we did to that scout, 6 or 7 times out of 10, I shouldn't have been able to kill him in one hit. But here we can see how our armor is performing, and I'd just like to clarify that point there. That was very interesting. Our armor was doing absolutely beautifully until I started to reverse down the slope. Now, when I reversed down the slope, as I said in the garage, it angled my frontal armor upwards, and it made my lower plate very weak indeed. And so that's the only time that I got penetrated, when I actually pulled back because I thought that the fire was getting a little too hot. And that's when I actually took the damage. So really, if I'd stayed up there, I probably could have stayed bouncing them. However, I don't think I really thought about that entirely at the time. All I'm thinking now is I don't really want to go and poke back up there, have a Jagdpanther shooting at me as well as a Type 59. What I'm trying to do now is just to spot for my team, which is something I can do a lot better than an IS-3 and a KV-4 with my increased view range. So Jingles and Ike are playing in T-34s, and this is going to be a very good example of a game where the 110, which is faster than a T-34, has much better DPM than the T-34, is able to just get more from it. And while you could argue, no, T-34 is a premium tank, a T-34 just can't compete with a 110. So the KV-3 bounced off us there. We pulled back to give ourselves enough gun depression to hurt him. And again, you see my fantastic armor. Let's just take a look at where these shots are bouncing, all off the beak. And the alpha damage is quite nice. If I'd been in an IS-3, I definitely wouldn't have been able to shoot that IS-2 twice. But having that 320 means that I can. So we're able to just take chunks and chunks out of these tier 7 heavies. And really, with the penetration the tier 7 level has, which is 175 on average, they really can't do anything against your frontal armor. They have to hit your weak points, i.e. your cupolas, or you have to give them your lower plate at a good angle for them. And having my 215 millimeters of penetration means that I can definitely give this KV-3 a run for his money, even through his turret. So this Jagdpanther is being a little bit YOLO here. We can go through his side armor and continue to put the pressure up. So you can see just how aggressive we're able to be, knowing that our frontal armor is going to hold. As long as we put the pressure on the enemy and keep them at our front, we'll have a good time. So you can see that I made a bit of a mistake there, just going to pause it for you. My armor is angled right now, and that's why the Type 59 was able to penetrate me. He shot me in the tracks from above. I needed to be angling my armor this way. I was just really worried about the gun depression in the tank. Because as you can see here, 6 degrees means you have to move forwards, backwards, and sometimes expose yourself a little bit more than you would want to. So now that the Type is in this position, it's going to be very hard for me to penetrate him. I take a blind shot anyway. That was really never going to penetrate. And looks like Ike just took a few shots there in the side. Oh my gosh. So the T-29 ignores me and shoots at Ike in the T-34. And that's something that will happen to you quite a lot. Your armor is so thick that in these good tiered matchups, the people often just don't want to shoot at you. We can see the Type 59 wasn't interested in shooting at me. We can see this Type T-69 really probably doesn't want to shoot at me. However, I just got slammed in the back there by the T-28 prototype. And we're just taking chunks out of the enemy team here. And unfortunately, that T-28 who just slammed one into me also took out Ike. I'm just going to speed up the game a little bit here. As this game is pretty much secure, I'm just rushing at the moment. We track him, and then the IS sets him on fire. And I'm thinking, okay, I've got 5 kills, let's do it, So I go into the forest. I bounce off the T-28's lower plate, and I believe I'm going to get penned in the top of the tank there. So there's a good example at the end. Got shot in the cupola. He had a nice clear shot into the top of my tank, and you've got to watch out for your weak points up there, especially with tanks that have like 240 plus pen, like the T-28 when it's got the 120 millimeter that he was using. Anyway, let's take a quick look at the post-game stats. So that game didn't last very long at all. In fact, it was 6 minutes. And we were able to get 4,886 experience for our double and 80,000 credits, giving us a profit of 48,000 credits. Fortunately, we didn't pick up the top gun due to the T-28 owning us really at the end. But in those 6 minutes, we were able to do 4,691 damage, getting us a base experience of 1,629, which is the highest experience game I've been able to achieve in the 110 so far. Now, our damage upon detecting was 2,171. I think quite a lot of that was from tracking. However, we did play aggressively and get the early spots at the beginning, so it's quite likely that that Jagdpanther did take quite a lot of fire from us. We can see actually it was spotting damage done to the Type 59, this Jagdpanzer IV, the KV-1S, and to the T-28 prototype at the end. So it wasn't actually us spotting the Jagdpanther, but we clearly detected 6 of the enemy tanks very quickly at the beginning. So our potential damage received was 4,080. We took 14 hits, of which 5 penetrated. And I mean, this is completely subjective, but it really felt that by the end of the game, the enemy were literally avoiding shooting me and just trying to shoot the other tanks around me. And that's literally how fearsome the frontal armor is on the 110. However, you still have to be careful. As you can see, the T-28 on the enemy team definitely chewed me up. He was able to do nearly 4,000 damage from the woods. Great game by him. He must have done at least 1,000 damage to me. And that's really what you've got to watch out for in the 110. When you go against those enemies with really high penetration that are able to negate your armor. Although I do have to say that really the only reason why the T-28 was able to kill me was because I played so aggressively to try and chase down that top gun, and I got punished for it. Anyway, let's have a quick look at how the 110 does when it's not top tier. So we're joining the battle here. It's a 62% on El Haluf, and we can see there are quite a few tier 10 tanks and some tier 9s on the enemy team. Now, I've gone into a position on El Haluf, and you can see me kind of side scraping off the wall there to get a good position as I come round. Put a nice hit into the IS-3 there. I have better aim time than him, so in theory I should be able to fire first. So I saw that the 268 fired, quite a few of the enemy tanks fired. So I come around the corner and have a nice clean shot there on the front of the Jagdpanther 2. I managed to dodge an artillery shell there, just a light shaving. We put another good hit there into a Jagdpanther 2. And what you need to be careful of in the 110 is when you do side scraping like this, you need to realize that you're actually kind of giving a better angle to the enemy. So what you need to do is you need to make the angle as fine as possible. So that's what I'm doing here. If you side scrape around like this, as an example, say I was pointing my gun this way, there are easy penetrations for the enemy. However, when you side scrape around like this, then you're going to be able to still keep most of your very thick armor well angled, and you'll have a good opportunity. Now, remember that I said that the 110 only really lacks engine power when it comes to its mobility. And look at us going down the slope here. We're whizzing along at 50 kilometers an hour. We can turn quite quickly and still keep up at that 40 kilometer an hour top speed limit. We managed to sneak down before the gun line that would inevitably be around the F3 area. This is what I was worried about when I made that move. I was trying to avoid fire from the F3. And that's why you saw me do the zigzag. I went down here because I thought maybe I'll need to hide behind these rocks to avoid fire from the other flank. But then when I saw that that wasn't the case, I could come down here just to get the faster route. So I tried to snipe the top of the T-28 there. We're unable to hit him. But now we're spotting for our team. Nice, easy shot up into the lower plate of the T-28 there. It was very nice to roll for 343 though. That's a good roll for this tank. So now we're engaging an IS-3. As many of you will know, the top of the IS-3 is a massive weak point. And so I can just aim up at the top of his turret all day long. However, if he gives me his lower plate, as he did there, we can just shoot that as well. And I knew that I would be able to fire before the IS-3 because I reload faster than him. Now, for some reason, the enemy Object 268 just TK'd the Jagdpanther 2, which I was slightly annoyed about because I would have had a good opportunity to pick up another kill there. And look at this, I'm putting pressure on what was 6 enemy tanks all in a row here. We went through the top of the IS-3 again, murdered him. And, okay, a Tier 8 heavy tank is taking on, well, now I've killed all 3 of the Tier 8s. Well, I guess it's a bit of insubordination in their ranks, and they're TKing each other. They're obviously disagreeing with what they're meant to do. But this is the kind of thing that the 110 can do. So what you see me doing here is, A, trying to avoid the artillery fire, and B, trying to get the right angle that I need to be able to shoot. Now, because you've only got 6 degrees of gun depression, which, let's be honest, is not terrible for a Chinese tank, it still is a limiting factor. I know that as soon as I crest that ridge and I give them my lower plate, which does stick out an absolute country mile, that I'm going to be in trouble. However, I've been requesting and talking to the artillery in chat, saying, hey, look, there's an Object 268 completely in the open, mate. Think you can bag him? And with good teamwork like that, the artillery focused on the easy kill for him, and he secures a kill, and I get that spotting damage. So, 2 of my Tier 10 medium tanks have now made it into the fray, and it looks like they're about to get stuck in. So the IS-7 shoots my track, misses my lower plate, and I'm still pretty much undamaged apart from that artillery splash that we took earlier. I think the enemy are more concerned about the bat chat. Able to go through the lower plate of the VK there. Then I turn my armor in to the left so I can avoid fire from the IS-7 and proceed to shoot the Carnarvon. I was genuinely surprised that I was unable to go through the armor of the Carnarvon there, and the IS-7 came around and put a cheeky shot into me. However, we've got the back of his turret. Get to put a nice shot into him, and you know this is where you're making your money. So he decides that he's going to go for me. He's like, oh, okay, I'll kill the other guy. So we actually lost our driver there. Let me pause that. So interestingly, the penetration shot is right there on my beak, and that's what I was talking about in the garage. That you really need to be worried about if the enemy tank is in point blank contact with you, and he can aim down. He kind of negates the well-angled hull armor, and that means that they can still penetrate it. I need to really adjust the engagement to be about from here to here, and then it's much harder for him to penetrate me. The funny thing is that my armor works very much the same way as the IS-7, so this is a bit of a lose-lose situation for me, in the fact of that he wants to try and do the same thing. He wants to try and get his armor to be about the same kind of distance, but it'll be much more effective for him as he does have very high penetration compared to me. What I'm interested in also is trying to just block him so that my two tier 10s behind him can stop him from trying to get through. However, it looks like I'm much more interested in trying to penetrate him. E50 puts in a nice ram there, and I shoot his... And there you go. There's a very good example of just exactly what I'm saying. So I shoot his tracks to take him out. So now that the IS-7 is at a mid-range engagement, he tried to shoot down on my lower plate, I believe. We can see there that the ricochet went off almost in exactly the same place that he shot me last time. However, because he wasn't in point-blank contact with me, he was unable to penetrate this time. So that's the kind of range of engagement that you want to try to achieve in the 110 to give the ultimate kind of angling of your armor. This is kind of where the tank is at its strongest. And we just casually wait to penetrate the side of that tier 10 heavy tank. So from here on, nothing really interesting happens, so I'm just going to show you the post-game stats now. So we had a fairly strong game there. We got 3,800 for our double. We did the second most damage on the team in a tier 10 game, which I'm very happy about, sandwiched with the artillery and all of the tier 10 tanks. Yet we did pick up the most experience because we were a tier 8 doing damage to at least a fair few tier 10s. Interestingly, we took 5,180 potential damage in that game. And that really shows you what, with careful use of the 110's armor, you can achieve. Now I know this is going to end up being a very long review, but hopefully you'll still appreciate it. I'm going to show you my final gameplay in the 110. Okay guys, welcome to Northwest in the 110. This is a nice matchup for this tank. You can see that there are only 5 tier 8s on the enemy team, the rest are tier 6 and tier 7. But the thing that I really wanted to highlight is that this is a 43%, and we can see that all of our arguably less skilled players due to XVM are in the top tier tanks, whereas the enemy's most skilled players are in their higher tier tanks and their less skilled players are in the lower tier tanks. So for all intensive purposes, this is a very hard matchup. And so I really like these kind of games because they really give you a chance to really show, and I said really about 7 times there, what the tank is capable of. Because when you're in that top tier matchup, it's the best situation for your tank. Now it's not going to be every situation, but it really allows you to kind of exaggerate the qualities of the 110. So we can see that this is an 8.10 replay, and that the lower part of Northwest has in fact been changed in 8.11. So don't be confused if you're seeing that the area at the southern eastern part of the map is different. So I'm immediately thinking, alright, the whole of our team has gone along the North Ridge, but in my opinion that doesn't really matter. Because if you take the southern part of this map, I feel that all that really achieves is it allows you to go up a very hard slope to take. At least that's what happens in 8.10. In 8.11, the southern part of the map could definitely be more important. So we're just putting casual shots in here along this ridge. We don't have the best accuracy, but we can see it's more than enough to really still pinpoint these enemy tanks at long ranges. So a good example there of a tier 6 tank doing damage to me. He was able to hit me in my side armor and do quite a lot of damage. Even a Hellcat. Fair enough, the Hellcat does have a 90mm gun with quite nice penetration. But being damaged by tier 6 tanks in your tier 8s, it's not brilliant. I'm just trying to scope for this T-71. Definitely one of the most dangerous tanks on the enemy team. But we don't have a shot. So I've noticed now that there's an IS-6 who's advancing along the southern part of the map, and that has to be one of the most dangerous enemy tanks. Shooting at Nashorn. Lovely. Now what you saw me do there was hold the shot until one of my team fired at him. Now, this is something that I recommend you do. And it's not to try and steal the kill. I didn't want to steal the kill. But what I wanted to do is wait until someone fired at him, knowing that I would be able to shoot him afterwards, to maximize the amount of damage that the enemy will take. In these kind of games, where literally I need as much as I can get if I want to be able to win it, if you're aiming at an unspotted enemy and you know that you've got a lot of your friends around you who are very likely to be able to shoot the target as well, wait. And as soon as you see them starting to fire at him and he knows that he's being fired at, then that's your chance to fire as well. And that's like a tip that I would recommend that you do in certain situations. So I'm just looking around at my team here and wondering what the hell they're doing. I have no idea why that Tiger, that Jagdtiger 88, why that ARL 44, why that Hellcat, or that PZSFL are all just sitting out completely in the open, waiting to get spotted and basically shot from the other ridge. But I guess that this is why that this is a 43%er. So we've got lovely shots here into this IS-6 from the side. I think I'm going to blind fire one more, just to try and have a punt at him. And this is my opinion as to why in 8.10 at least, I felt that the North Ridge was more important. Because the North Ridge can really shoot at quite a few of the other locations on the map. And I feel that to get into the base, it's far too hard from the south. And importantly, even when you get into the base, the North Ridge, at least from the northeastern spawn, can just whiz back and be able to defend the cap. So unfortunately, we're losing by 3 tanks now. I haven't done a huge amount of damage. I've only done 1,500. Although there have been quite a few shots that might have gone in from being blind. Okay, so I feel that the engagement on this flank is no longer effective. I would quite like to be able to kill this Super Pershing. We get lucky with that shot, shooting at a Super Pershing from this angle. Fair enough, we might hit his cupolas. That was still very fortunate that we were able to go in there. I don't really want to stay northwest now, because trying to engage a T-34 at long ranges, especially if he goes hull down, is very tricky. So, I request that my 5100 falls back, and I want to deal with the fact that there are 2 Tier 8 heavy tanks that are coming into my base. Now, one thing I was also thinking at the time is, oh my god, that's a KV-5 and an IS-6. Those are possibly some of the most juicy targets for the 110 of all time. Why? Because they have 175mm penetration guns, and even if they fire premium, firstly, the APCR will only have, I think it's 3 or is it 2 degrees of normalization. But more importantly, they just don't have the penetration to take the front of your tank. So one-on-one, an IS-6 versus a 110, the 110 is probably going to win 90% of the time if the players are of equal skill. And it's the same with the KV-5. 90% of the time the 110 will win. And you see me swooping in here. To be able to begin the engagements on their Tier 8 heavy tanks. So now the KV-5 seems to want to engage me, then he gives up because he figures out that he's just going to get shot in the side anyway, so he soldiers on and goes forward. Oh, a bit of a lame shot there. Slow reactions. Didn't really see that he died. Hey, and now we've turned the game around completely. We're actually now winning by 1 tank. So I come in and casually claim the Leopard. I seem to get shot by my... No, probably not my own team. It's probably the KV-1S above me. Very good example there. The IS-6 is just completely incapable of penetrating me, almost from the front, unless he shoots my cupolas or he loads APCR and gets quite a high roll. But I'm able to devastate him. Now, unfortunately, my 5100 was killed by a KV-1S. But I really felt that I had to do that sweep to take out those 2 Tier 8 heavy tanks and really change the game into our favor again. Now, I've been conservative with my health, which means that I'm going to have enough of it to play around with the last enemy tanks in the game. There is a very dangerous T-34, and now a T-34, on the other hand, is one of the premium tanks at Tier 8 that can give you a lot of grief. And that's because the T-34 has 120mm, and it has very high penetration. When you're engaging a T-34, you want to use the fact that you have much higher DPM than him because of your rate of fire. You need to penetrate shot after shot. You need to hit him at least twice for every time he hits you. But the interesting thing is that he has a chance to bounce off my armor, whereas I really have very little chance to bounce off his hull armor. He needs to go hull down and use his turret. So a good shot there by my VK4502A. And now we have a very interesting engagement, a Jagdtiger 88. Now Jagdtiger 88 is a tank that can give me trouble because I need to see its lower plate. I cannot penetrate its upper hull, and I cannot penetrate its superstructure. I might be able to if I was to fire premium. But he aimed for my cupolas there, and that's interesting. I didn't actually take any damage, just my viewports got knocked out. Let's take a look at that just quickly. So we can see that even though he was able to hit my cupola there, it just took out my viewports rather than actually damaging the tank. So that's where he hit, and no damage, just viewport damage, which was lovely because I was able to put 331 shot into him. So now I advance a little bit. I'm quite worried about where the T-34 is. And I'm also very interested into why that duck tank is just going after this Jagdtiger 88. I request him to fall back, but for some reason he just continues to go forwards. I tell him to fall back again, because I don't want to go out into the open versus a Jagdtiger and a T-34. I want to either find the T-34 or force the Jagdtiger out into the open. So now that the VK does not fall back and gets taken out, this game is starting to change again. I'm not sure if that IS is AFK. I don't believe he is. He could be AFK though. And I'm just going for this Jagdtiger 88. We're able to go through his upper plate, and now I load some premium rounds. I'm loading the premium rounds because this game has just got really close after he killed the SU-152. I don't believe that the IS is actually here. Yeah, I think the IS is most definitely a bot, considering he's got 466 efficiency. So I come round, put a shot into the Jagdtiger 88, and bounce his. And now that I've got my premium rounds, I don't even really need to hit his lower plate. And we can see I didn't actually take any damage there from the Jagdtiger 88. And I did 1,000 to him. And that's just a testament to the fact that the 110's frontal armor is just that damn strong. It really is. It's just great frontal armor, especially when you're engaging tanks. Premium tier 8s, apart from the T-34, it just laps up. It really just laps them up. And that's why this matchup was so damn good for this tank. Having an IS-6, a Super Pershing, a KV-5, and a Jagdtiger 88 against me, even though they're played by fairly skilled players. I mean, that Jagdtiger 88 was no slouch. He picked up 4 kills by them. He's got 54% win ratio. He's got 1,300 efficiency. But he was still able to do barely anything to the 110 because I controlled the engagement and made sure that I could shoot his lower plate and then loaded the occasional premium round. Okay, so I'm just going to be aggressive here because there's only 3 minutes left in the game. And that was the worst thing that I've done so far this game. That was just a terrible donkey shot. I have no idea why I tried to shoot the side of his hull armor when it was so well angled. I should have just casually shot down onto his upper plate and I would have penned it nearly every time. So that was the worst thing that I've done this game. But let's continue anyway. So what you see me doing here is trying to get the engagement at a mid-range. The T-34 still manages to YOLO a shot through me. Let's just take a look to see where it penetrated. It looks like he was able to just go through the beak of my armor, but he does have that extra high penetration. However, we're able to shoot him again. Now I'm trying to make sure that I don't take any ram damage because I have 505 health, which means that he has to shoot me at least twice. And now I know I've got him, really. I'm not even firing premium rounds at him at the moment, I'm just firing regular rounds. That's how controlled I felt the game was. Now, I had to be very aggressive at that T-34 because of the fact that there was only 3 minutes left in the game and I had to find a Tiger one or I had to cap. So that's why I came around that corner so aggressively to try and take him out. Now, I really played very badly with the first shot, and that nearly meant that I took a lot more damage than I wanted to. We can see that the IS, in fact, isn't actually a bot. Or maybe he is a bot and he's just actually come back, but I don't know. Having 44% wins and 400 efficiency, I'm not sure if that automatically means that you're a bot or not. But getting back to the game, I had to be very aggressive at that T-34. I YOLO'd around the corner. I took one penetrating shot. Then we got into close quarters. He penetrated me again. But he did bounce the last one that he fired. I didn't get really lucky there. It was more of a case of the 110 with its higher DPM is just able to massacre a T-34. And I did donk the first shot, but then I was able to put in the next 4, doing a total of 1,228 damage to him. I did just notice that I think I got a bingo roll on my second penetration. Look at that, I rolled for 400 damage. That is insanely high roll, but it didn't really matter in the end because the fourth one only had to do 170 damage. So, I've only got 1 minute and 20 seconds left in this game. Thankfully, I can see the Tiger. I decided to fire at the building just to try and start to clear the building. I didn't know if it would be able to take it out in one shot. Frankly, I feel very under pressure at the moment just to try and get stuck in there with only 1 minute left in the game. Thankfully, he's not really running from me. I have no idea what he's doing. But he is about to get absolutely chewed up once again. So I come through, penetrate him, bounce his shot, and I had that game by the balls all the way at the end. So let's take a quick look at some post-game stats. So we had a great game there. We got 6,696 experience, but I do highlight that that was for a triple. If it was for a double, I'd be like, oh my god, yes, but we didn't do really that much in the game to really earn some kind of mega experience. So we did 6,000 damage nearly in that game, which means that a couple of our blind shots did go in. We fired 27, of which we hit 23, and of the 23 we hit, 22 penetrated. We took 11 hits in the game, of which 5 penetrated us, giving us a potential damage received of 3,350. Now I finished with about 500 health left, which is a third of the tank's health, although I have to admit I lost a lot of that due to the reckless engagement that I had to really push the tempo with on the T-34. I think until that T-34 you saw me play very calm, composed, really picked my engagements, and showed you guys what the 110 is capable of against equal and lower tier targets. Really, if the enemy has only got 200 millimeters of penetration and less, preferably 175 millimeters of penetration and less, they have nearly 0% chance to be able to penetrate your tank from the front. We can see that even if they do hit your cupolas, sometimes your viewports are just going to absorb all the damage anyway. I hope this gameplay well represented the 110 for you, and I've been able to highlight why the 110 has given me some of the best stats that I've been able to achieve in World of Tanks in any tank in the game. I fully recommend this tank. I think it's a very strong entry at tier 8. And I'd like to highlight the next tank on from it, the WZ-111. As you can see, I'm having some success in this beast. And it's definitely worth soldiering on through the IS-2, even if you're struggling with it, just to get the 110, and especially to end up getting the absolute beast of a tank that is the 111. So guys, I hope you've enjoyed this quick tank review. I've put a lot of effort into it, so I'd really appreciate it if you rated it down below. And let me know what you think about the 110. Do you think that it's a fantastic tank? Do you, in your clan, use it in clan wars? Do you think that it's more of a solo queue kind of tank rather than using it in platoons or using it in tank companies? Let me know what you guys think. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.